preying on the wallets of addicted gamblers that they helped create with their carefully designed machines. Howard Schaefer, a researcher at Harvard, noted this increased addictiveness of modern games like slots by calling them the crack cocaine of gambling. In the midst of all this horrible press, the gambling industry needed a strategy to stay alive. Luckily for them, they had watched someone else go through this and had learned a few things. You can't completely deny the facts. The cigarette industry tried it and it didn't work. The truth eventually comes out. So they came up with a different plan. Instead of denying gambling addiction, they would embrace the problem publicly and also take an extremely active role in researching the science of gambling addiction. By doing this, they could frame the discussion of the addiction the way they wanted to. And so the National Center for Responsible Gaming was created, funded by casino dollars. And here's how they describe gambling addiction today.
So what exactly is a gambling disorder? And why do some people struggle with it while others do not? One point that research clearly shows is that gambling disorders are closely linked with other psychological problems, including depression and substance abuse. We also know that, over time, proximity to casinos does not impact the prevalence of gambling disorders. And while the vast majority of people gamble responsibly, approximately 1% of Americans are diagnosed with a gambling disorder.
Now, it might not surprise you, many of their findings are in direct contradiction to scientific studies that aren't backed by casino dollars. But rather than nitpicking everything, I want to focus on their macro message. The biggest thing is that they want to imply that addicts are born that way. They're not created from a product. If you can blame addiction on brain problems within the addict, you are indirectly vindicating the gambling machines. Of course, this is what the casinos want. The most dangerous idea is that they have anything to do with creating addicts. So instead they say, it's not the product that causes the problem. The problem is already within the addict and just expresses itself in the addiction. The senior research director for the NCRG, Christine Riley, makes this bias explicit. Quote, things are not addictive, they're just not. If you don't have that vulnerability, the odds are you won't get addicted. And the NCRG is willing to put up a lot of money to any scientist who will agree with them. And surprisingly, one of the people who took them up on that offer was Howard Schaefer, the man quoted earlier as calling slots the crack cocaine of gambling. Today, he tells a much different story, that casino games like slots aren't addictive. And if this seems like a 180 to you, you're not the only one. When asked about this contradiction, he tried really hard to square the two opinions.
But at one point, you said slot machines were the crack cocaine of gambling.
I did say that.
And how does that square with what you're telling me today?
Not everybody who uses crack cocaine becomes addicted.
Yeah, but nobody's going to sit here and try to tell me crack cocaine isn't addictive. And if this is like crack cocaine, the conclusion is that it's addictive.
I don't come to the same conclusion because
How
the
could you not?
majority of people that have used cocaine have not developed cocaine addiction. Only a small minority have. And the same would be true with gambling.
Okay, now obviously Howard Schaefer would say the millions of dollars in research funding he's received hasn't tainted his research, but in Schaefer's words.
I don't come to the same conclusion.
Because if he started to say the wrong things, a lot of that funding would disappear. Research funding from places like the NCRG, but also MGM Resorts and DraftKings, just to name a few. And this strategy to buy scientific research, to shift the burden of responsibility on
Microphone activated. Hallo.
Ja.
Guck mal, ich habe mir ein neues Headset gekauft.
Alter, kannst du mal klicken, weil das stinkt hier.
Ich habe mir ein neues
Sowas von
Headset.
nach Scheiße.
Chris, bitte nimm das auf.
War ich kurz klein.
Jetzt guck halt.
Ja. Wieso hast du das gekauft?
Ich schieß einfach so, sondern